Black Christmas is a 1974 cult classic horror film. It's believed to be one of the first slasher films, however it's not the first because the movies Peeping Tom and Psycho, those both came before it, and I think there may have been some more as well, but I'm not sure. The movie is directed by Bob Clark, who later became more well known for directing Porky's and also A Christmas Story in the 80s. You know, that one about the kid who wants a BB gun for Christmas and everyone tells him he'll shoot his eyes out. The story of the movie revolves around several sorority girls, some of which are played by Olivia Hussey, who was in the classic 1968 Romeo and Juliet film adaptation, and also Margot Kidder, who is most well known for the role of Lois Lane in the classic Christopher Reeve Superman movies. The movie story revolves around these girls being stalked by a psychopathic killer who's making frightening phone calls. The girls have been getting phone calls from a strange man that they call the Moaner, and we get a call from him during the movie's first scene when the girls are having an innocent party. The movie starts off. The first shot of the movie, we get a POV shot of a man climbing up into the house's attic, and it's shortly after that the girls receive the first telephone call. We see the man creeping around the house, and eventually he kills one of the sorority girls, and drags her up in the attic and puts a bag around her head, which gives us the movie's classic shot of the girl in the attic with a plastic bag around her head, which is very creepy and just sort of really unnerving to look at. As the movie goes on, a woman's school-aged daughter goes missing as well, and is eventually found dead in the park. The girls start to become more frightened by the fact that Claire, the girl who was the sorority girl who was murdered, is missing, and the police start a search for her. And during that search, they find the schoolgirl who was murdered on their way through the park. Or rather Jess, played by Olivia Hussey, start to receive very threatening and just like really under your skin, creepy as hell phone calls from an anonymous caller who is clearly a psychopath. We're hinted that the caller's name might be Billy, but unlike the 2006 remake, the original Black Christmas never clarifies that in any way. We never find out who the killer is, spoiler. And as the phone calls go on, they really do get more and more sort of violent and creepy. Of course, the police, when Jess notifies the police that she's been getting these strange phone calls, the police believe that this might be linked to some of the murders that have been going on, and they put a bug trap tracer on the house's phone in an attempt to trace where the calls are coming from. The movie is loosely based on the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, but it's also based on several murders that went on in Canada around Christmas time. Sorry for the stuttering. I tend to stutter a lot during these videos. I don't know why. But anyway, the movie is believed to be at least one of the first movies to use the now heavily cliched sequence of the killer calling from inside the victim's house. The movie's most famous scene is probably the scene where the phone company finally manages to trace one of the killer's calls, and it turns out to be coming from a separate phone line inside Jess's house, or rather, the sorority house she lives in. The movie's music is just really creepy as well, especially when she finds out that the calls are coming from inside the house. You actually have to see the movie itself to understand what I mean. What I would praise Black Christmas for is that while it tells the story of a psychopathic killer, it doesn't delve too much into the psycho gross part. And there's very little gore in the movie. Only toward the end do we see any blood at all. And the movies, and another iconic scene from the movies is when Jess has just found 2 sorority girls murdered, and she looks and she sees the eye of the killer staring at her from behind a door, which is a really creepy shot. That some of the other actors include Lieutenant Fuller, played by, let me look that up. John Saxon, and also in the movie is Keir Dullea, who plays Jess's boyfriend, and is suspected of being the killer. The movie is just super creepy. It's one of my favorite horror films, I have to say. There's this one phone call where Jess answers the phone, and there's a voice on the other end of the phone that's just like, oh God, please help me. And like there, I get chills under my spine. That's not the only part of the movie that sends chills down your spine as well, or at least down mine. There's the part, most of the parts I've already mentioned. So with that said, I'm gonna give this movie an 8 out of 10 because it's just a really scary, creepy film. I know I've said that enough, but there are some humorous moments as well. Most of which are pretty vulgar. Just warning you. But they're not over the top like a lot of the stuff we have today. Like some of the classic horror films released in the 60s and 80s, Black Christmas actually received really terrible critical reviews when it was released because the critics thought it was too violent and just too vulgar, and it got panned back when it came out, and it only had moderate box office draw as well. If I kind of wish those critics would see some of the movies we have today to see what they'd think of that stuff, just out of curiosity. You know, some of the other movies that were received terribly as well were Peeping Tom and The Shining. And all 3 of those movies, The Shining, Black Christmas, and Peeping Tom, are today considered classics. So, I don't know what that says about critics back then. Anyway, that's about it. Just, if you really want a good, creepy slasher film, definitely don't pass this one up. And, in my opinion, I'm just going to say this real quick. The 2006 remakes is total garbage, in my opinion. Anyway, that's about it. This is What's Up 2190, and I'm signing off. Have a nice day. On second thought, I thought I'd throw in one last interesting fact. Though this film is considered to be one of the first slasher films, director Bob Clark actually considered Black Christmas to be more of a psychological horror film. R.I.P. Bob Clark, you will be missed.